It all started when the power went out late at night, leaving me alone with people I shouldn't desire. I remember that moment as if it were etched into my soul. A sudden plunge into darkness that transformed the familiar hum of my office into an eerie silence punctuated only by the soft buzz of emergency lights. I was finishing up some final reports at the sleek downtown office, where glass walls and modern decor usually echoed the pulse of ambition. Tonight, however, everything felt different. There was an undercurrent of forbidden tension in the air, a secret promise whispered between the shadows. I had always prided myself on my professionalism and the strict boundaries I maintained at work. But as I gathered my notes and prepared to leave, the unexpected darkness and the strange murmurs of unseen colleagues stirred something within me. In that moment, the usual clear lines between duty and desire began to blur. The office, typically a place of predictable routines and measured interactions, suddenly felt like a stage for an unfolding drama. A drama where every whispered word and furtive glance hinted at a hidden world of workplace secrets. In the dim light of the emergency lamps, I noticed silhouettes moving with a cautious grace. Michael, my confident yet enigmatic boss, was the first to step into view. His presence, usually commanding and measured during the day, now radiated a mysterious allure as he checked on the corridors. There was a spark in his eyes, a look that suggested he knew more than he let on, as if he were privy to secrets that none of us dared to imagine. Then there was Jason, a colleague whose easy smile and quiet strength had always been a comfort in the routine of our daily tasks. Tonight, however, his gaze was intense and laden with an unspoken challenge. It was as if the darkness had peeled away his usual reserved demeanor, revealing an undercurrent of raw emotion that both intrigued and unsettled me. I found myself wondering what he was thinking, and whether his eyes held a silent invitation to step beyond the ordinary. Across the room, near the window overlooking the city lights, stood Sophia. Known for her sharp intellect and unyielding independence, she carried herself with a sense of purpose that could freeze time. Yet tonight, even she seemed to harbor a secret vulnerability, an almost imperceptible tremor in her voice when she laughed, as if the power outage had unlocked a door to a hidden part of herself. Her eyes darted around, betraying an internal struggle between the allure of the forbidden and the need to maintain control. Rebecca, my trusted mentor, and the one person I always relied on for guidance in the maze of corporate politics, was also present. Her usually calm and composed demeanor had been replaced by an anxious energy that made my heart race. I could tell that even someone as experienced and resilient as Rebecca was unsettled by the sudden shift in our environment. Her whispered words and tentative glances suggested that there was more to this night than a mere technical glitch. As I navigated the now quiet hallways, every step felt weighted with anticipation. The soft echoes of our footsteps and the low murmur of voices in the background blended into a symphony of secrets that seemed to promise both danger and desire. It was in that moment I realized that our workplace had transformed into a stage for a drama of forbidden tension, a narrative of unspoken longings and hidden confessions that defied the boundaries of our daily lives. Standing by my desk, I hesitated. My mind raced with conflicting emotions, curiosity battling with the ingrained need to stay detached. I recalled the countless times I had sworn never to let personal desires infiltrate my professional space. And yet, tonight, every instinct in me was drawn to the mystery unfolding in those dimly lit corners. It was as if fate itself had conspired to blur the lines of propriety, daring me to explore the tantalizing abyss of what lay beneath our carefully constructed facades. "Subscribe for more confessions," a small voice inside me urged, echoing the call of every secret I had ever harbored. I knew that behind each cautious glance and every unspoken word lay a story waiting to be told, a story of workplace secrets that could shatter the illusion of normalcy. In that charged atmosphere, even the mundane became extraordinary. The clatter of a dropped file, the soft murmur of conversation in an empty conference room, the almost imperceptible sigh of relief from someone burdened by unvoiced desires. All of these small moments wove together into a tapestry of emotional intensity. With each passing second, the boundaries of our roles seemed to dissolve. I found myself not just a bystander, but a participant in an unfolding narrative where every shadow held the promise of revelation. The palpable energy in the air whispered questions I was too afraid to ask aloud. Who among us was truly in control? And who was silently surrendering to the allure of the forbidden? As I reached for my coat in the solitude of my cubicle, the atmosphere shifted once more. A sudden soft knock echoed through the hallway, a sound that, in the stillness of the night, resonated like a warning. My heart pounded in my chest as I paused, every nerve on high alert. Who was out there, and what did they want? In that electrified moment, I realized that the night was far from over, and that our carefully hidden truths were about to be exposed. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead, when a shadow moved at the edge of my vision, a figure that seemed to linger just beyond the reach of the emergency lights. My pulse quickened, and a question burned in my mind. Was this just another trick of the darkness, or was it the harbinger of an even deeper secret? I froze for a moment, the sound of that soft knock echoing in the cavernous silence of the deserted office. My pulse pounded as I edged out of my cubicle, each step measured and tentative. The corridor was bathed in the dim glow of emergency lights, every shadow a silent reminder that the familiar had been transformed into something unknown. I moved slowly, as if each step might unravel another secret, my mind a whirlwind of unanswered questions. Brief pause. As I rounded a corner, I nearly collided with Jason, who appeared suddenly at the far end of the hallway. His eyes, usually warm and inviting during daylight hours, now burned with an intensity that made me question everything I thought I knew about him. We stood so close that I could almost feel the warmth of his breath. The space between us seemed to dissolve, as if the physical boundaries of our professional roles had vanished in the quiet darkness. Brief pause. "Emily," he murmured, his voice low and husky, laden with a hint of something I couldn't quite name, a mixture of concern and unspoken invitation. I nodded, words failing me in the charged atmosphere. There was an undeniable magnetism in that forbidden proximity, a tension that neither of us could ignore. His presence challenged the safe distance we maintained during daylight, daring us to acknowledge the hidden desires simmering just beneath the surface. As we continued down the hall, the air itself felt heavier, saturated with secrets and unspoken promises. The silence was punctuated by the soft hum of the backup generators and the occasional creak of the building settling into the night. I could sense that we were not alone. Michael's authoritative footsteps echoed in the distance, and I caught sight of him near the glass-paneled elevator. His silhouette, backlit by the faint emergency glow, exuded a calm yet mysterious authority. In that moment, the familiar roles of boss and subordinate blurred into an enigmatic dance of power and vulnerability. Brief pause. I hesitated at the intersection of two hallways, where a forgotten conference room lay shrouded in darkness. The space, usually filled with the mundane clatter of meetings and presentations, now pulsed with a raw, almost tangible energy. My mind raced. What secrets had been concealed behind these closed doors? My heart ached with both trepidation and a forbidden curiosity urging me forward. Each step was laden with both anticipation and the weight of our unspoken defiance of every rule I had ever sworn to uphold. Inside the conference room, the atmosphere was charged as if the walls themselves were privy to our transgressions. I found myself standing mere inches from Sophia, whose usual steely composure had given way to a more vulnerable aura. The interplay of light and shadow accentuated the contours of her face, revealing a complexity that belied her reputation as the unyielding, independent force in our midst. Her eyes flickered with uncertainty and a hint of longing, a silent question that mirrored my own internal struggle. Brief pause. The closer we stood, the more palpable the forbidden tension became. The room was small, confining us in a way that amplified every shared breath, every accidental touch. For a brief, stolen moment, I forgot about the rigid hierarchies and expectations that defined our daily interactions. Instead, I found myself drawn to the intimacy of that space, where the office's strict boundaries seemed to melt away. I could almost believe that in that fleeting proximity, there was a promise of liberation from the chains of propriety. Brief pause. As if sensing the shifting dynamics, Rebecca emerged from the far side of the room. Her usually reassuring presence was tinged with an uncharacteristic hesitation. "Emily, Jason," she began, her voice catching slightly as if she too was caught in the grip of this surreal moment. There was a softness in her tone that hinted at secrets she had kept buried, a vulnerability that betrayed the steadfast mentor I had always known. Her arrival only deepened the tension. Suddenly, the room was not just an empty space, but a crucible of intersecting desires and hidden conflicts. The proximity of our bodies, the collision of our unspoken confessions. It was as if the night had conspired to strip away the carefully constructed facades we maintained during the day. Every glance, every subtle movement carried the weight of a forbidden allure, drawing us into a dangerous game where the lines between right and wrong were increasingly blurred. Brief pause. I felt an electric charge ripple through me as I realized that tonight, the office was no longer a place of rigid professionalism, but a stage for something far more intimate and perilous. The physical closeness in the empty corridors and secluded rooms was a silent invitation to step beyond the boundaries I had so diligently guarded. And as I stood there, caught between the familiar and the unknown, a myriad of questions swirled in my mind. What were we truly seeking in this darkness? Could we dare to embrace the hidden passions that pulsed beneath our everyday interactions? In that frozen moment, as our eyes met in a silent, unspoken acknowledgement of our shared secret, the sound of a distant phone ringing shattered the fragile stillness. The unexpected intrusion jolted us from our reverie, and for an instant, the magnetic pull of forbidden proximity wavered. I felt a surge of panic as the sound reverberated through the room, a stark reminder that reality was waiting just beyond the veil of our clandestine encounter. Brief pause. The phone's insistent ring grew louder, mingling with our rapid heartbeats and heightening the tension that enveloped us. In that split second, every unspoken desire and every hidden emotion came crashing to the forefront. Was this merely an interruption, or a sign that the fragile world we had built in the shadows was about to unravel? My breath hitched as I glanced at each face in the room, their expressions mirroring my own inner turmoil. We were all suspended in a moment of exquisite uncertainty, caught between the comfort of familiar roles and the seductive allure of a night that promised to defy every expectation. I stepped toward the phone, my hand trembling as I reached out to silence its insistent call. But before I could act, the sound abruptly ceased, leaving behind an oppressive silence that pressed in on all of us. The abrupt silence was as unsettling as the ringing had been, a stark, haunting reminder that nothing in this night was as it seemed. And as I stood there, enveloped in the residual tension, I couldn't shake the feeling that something even more dangerous was about to be revealed, a truth that might forever alter the course of our lives. Brief pause. In that charged silence, a whisper of movement caught my eye. A subtle shift in the shadows near the doorway, as if someone or something was poised to step into the light. The question that had been gnawing at the edges of my consciousness now loomed larger than ever. Who was that, and what did their presence mean for us all? The answer, I feared, would shatter the fragile balance of the forbidden world we had so carefully constructed. The charged silence that had hung over the room after the abrupt phone call soon gave way to an undercurrent of whispered urgency. We instinctively gathered in the dimly lit conference room, the space now pulsing with a palpable mix of fear, desire, and an almost dangerous curiosity. I could feel the tension between us intensify, as if every heartbeat was drawing us closer to an inevitable, forbidden convergence. Brief pause. Jason's steady hand reached out, his fingers brushing against mine in a silent gesture of reassurance. That fleeting touch sent shivers down my spine, igniting a spark of defiance against the rules I had always clung to. I struggled to reconcile the comfort of his presence with the inherent risk of crossing the boundaries that our professional lives demanded. In that moment, the office's cold walls and strict hierarchies melted away, leaving only a raw, unguarded reality where every glance held a secret and every heartbeat echoed with forbidden tension. Brief pause. Michael, ever the emblem of authority, entered the room with measured steps, his gaze fixed on each of us with an intensity that belied his calm demeanor. His eyes, deep and inscrutable, seemed to silently question the very fabric of our resolve. As he took a seat at the head of the table, the air seemed to tighten further. His presence was a reminder that even in the midst of this clandestine gathering, the rules of our corporate world loomed like an unyielding specter. Yet, beneath that authority, there was something softer, a vulnerability that made his intrusion into our secret space all the more perplexing. Brief pause. Sophia, standing near the window, appeared as though she were caught in the midst of a profound internal battle. Her eyes flickered with emotions that I rarely saw, torn between the steely determination she was known for and an unexpected tenderness that now shone through. The interplay of light and shadow on her face seemed to capture the duality of our situation, a powerful reminder that behind every mask of professionalism, there lay a hidden reservoir of unspoken truths and desires. Brief pause. Rebecca, my mentor, lingered at the periphery, her presence both comforting and unnerving. I could tell that the events of the night had shaken her more than she let on, her usually composed expression marred by fleeting moments of worry. As she hesitated before speaking, I sensed that the weight of what was unfolding pressed upon her, stirring memories of similar crossroads in her past. Her silence, heavy with unspoken concern, left me wondering what sacrifices she had once made in the name of duty and desire. Brief pause. We exchanged glances that were loaded with questions, silent inquiries about our intentions and the risks we were willing to take. The unexpected convergence of our paths in this moment of crisis was as thrilling as it was dangerous. The room was filled with murmurs that barely broke the surface of our collective uncertainty, each one hinting at a deeper, more complex narrative of workplace secrets and the allure of breaking free from rigid conventions. Brief pause. In the midst of this fragile equilibrium, the room's only source of light, a flickering fluorescent bulb overhead, cast erratic shadows that danced across our faces, intensifying the surreal atmosphere. The boundaries that had once defined our roles began to blur, leaving us suspended in a delicate balance between the professional and the profoundly personal. I couldn't help but wonder if fate had orchestrated this encounter, a night that promised to unearth desires long suppressed by the demands of our everyday lives. Brief pause. Then, without warning, a series of muffled footsteps echoed down the hallway outside the conference room. The sound grew louder, punctuating our silent communion and shattering the brief respite of our introspection. My heart hammered in my chest as the door creaked open once more, and in walked a figure whose unexpected presence jolted us all from our reverie. It was as if the universe had conspired to throw us yet another curveball at the precise moment when we had begun to let our guard down. Brief pause. The newcomer was a middle-aged man whose identity I could not immediately place. A contractor, perhaps, sent for some maintenance work. But there was something about the way he moved, the subtle yet deliberate glances he cast in our direction, that hinted he was more than he appeared. His eyes, dark and unyielding, scanned the room with an intensity that suggested he was not just there to fix a broken fixture. A quiet murmur spread through the room as he nodded curtly and made his way to a corner, his presence adding another layer of complexity to an already volatile mix of emotions. Brief pause. Questions surged through my mind. Who was he really? Had he been sent to monitor us? Or was his arrival a mere coincidence? A twist in an already tangled narrative. The uncertainty clawed at my resolve, urging me to confront this new variable even as I wrestled with the forbidden allure of the moment. Every face around me mirrored my own conflicted emotions, and in the silence that followed his entrance, I could almost hear the unspoken question that bound us all. What secrets would this night reveal next? Brief pause. Jason's eyes met mine, as if to silently acknowledge the weight of the unasked question, and I felt a flicker of determination ignite within me. In that charged space, the convergence of our varied desires and fears had transformed the room into a crucible of vulnerability, a place where the rules of our everyday lives were momentarily suspended. The soft hum of the emergency lights and the distant murmur of the building's mechanical systems served as a reminder that, despite our bold defiance, reality was always lurking just outside the fragile bubble we had created. Brief pause. As our collective gaze shifted back to the mysterious contractor, the tension in the room reached a fevered pitch. Michael's authoritative stance wavered ever so slightly, his eyes narrowing as he scrutinized the newcomer. Sophia's poised exterior gave way to an almost imperceptible tremor of apprehension, while Rebecca's silent concern deepened into a look of resigned understanding. The air crackled with anticipation, each of us poised on the brink of a revelation that promised to upend everything we thought we knew about the boundaries we had so carefully maintained. Brief pause. In that excruciating moment of collective uncertainty, the contractor stepped forward and, without a word, extended a sealed envelope towards Michael. The envelope, unmarked and heavy with implication, seemed to pulse with a forbidden energy of its own. A hushed gasp escaped from somewhere in the room as Michael's hand hesitated above it, the envelope symbolizing both a potential solution and a dangerous disruption to the delicate balance we had all been teetering on. Brief pause. Time itself appeared to slow as Michael broke the seal, revealing a series of documents that hinted at long-hidden company secrets and personal betrayals. The implications were staggering, a tangled web of deception that connected our private desires with the very foundations of our professional world. My mind raced, each revelation stoking the flames of curiosity and dread in equal measure. Pidai. Documents alluded to clandestine meetings, financial discrepancies, and personal liaisons that had been meticulously concealed behind the polished veneer of our workplace. Brief pause. With the envelope now open and its contents laid bare before us, I felt as though the ground beneath me was shifting. Every heartbeat, every whispered word, and every stolen glance took on a new urgency. I could sense that the secrets contained within that envelope were about to shatter the fragile constructs we had built to protect ourselves. And as the room held its collective breath, I couldn't help but ask, were we truly prepared for the cascade of revelations that was about to wash over us? And would any of us be able to withstand the tidal wave of forbidden truths? Brief pause, that charged silence. As our eyes locked in a shared moment of profound vulnerability, I realized that the convergence of fate, desire, and corporate intrigue had set us on a collision course with destiny. The documents trembled in Michael's grasp, their implications vast and unfathomable. And just as the weight of our collective uncertainty threatened to overwhelm us, the sound of a distant alarm shattered the stillness, a harbinger of consequences too terrible to fully imagine. The moment hung suspended in time, our fates intertwined, in a tapestry of secrets and unspoken confessions, as the piercing alarm echoed through the corridors, signaling that the night was far from over. I knew the tension that had been building all night was about to erupt in an irreversible climax. The alarm continued to wail in the distance, a stark reminder that every secret has its reckoning. As Michael's eyes scanned the documents in his trembling grasp, the charged atmosphere seemed to crystallize into a single moment of fateful choice. In that suspended second, my heart pounded like a war drum, and I felt a mixture of anticipation and dread. Then, as if orchestrated by fate itself, Jason stepped forward, his expression an unreadable mask. His eyes met mine with a hint of sorrow, and in that gaze, I sensed a betrayal deeper than any word could convey. It was as if every glance, every whispered secret from earlier, had been a prelude to this moment of shattering revelation. His hand reached out, not to offer comfort, but to intercept Michael's hesitant move to confront the damning evidence. In that instant, every secret trust we had nurtured, every moment of forbidden proximity, was tainted by the crushing knowledge that our alliance was built on false pretenses. The air thickened with the weight of shattered loyalty. The documents, once mere revelations of corporate misdeeds, now served as a searing testament to a personal betrayal that struck at the core of our intertwined fates. Michael's authoritative presence faltered, and his voice, barely audible over the relentless alarm, trembled as he uttered, You were never on my side." In that dissonant moment, the truth unraveled. Jason had colluded with forces far beyond our comprehension, orchestrating events that would dismantle our world. My pulse raced as the full scope of the betrayal crashed over me. The trust I had placed in my colleagues disintegrated before my eyes, leaving behind nothing but the shards of a fragile alliance. As the contractor watched silently from the shadows, a grim smile playing on his lips, I realized that every stolen glance and every whispered promise was now a painful reminder of deception. Long pause. The revelation hit me like a tidal wave, leaving me stranded in a sea of regret and disbelief. The office, once a sanctuary of ambition and hidden desires, had transformed into a battleground where loyalty and deceit waged an unforgiving war. The sirens outside signaled more than just impending security. They heralded the collapse of everything I had once believed in. In that frozen moment, I was left grappling with questions that would remain agonizingly unanswered. How could I have been so blind? Was there ever truly an ally among us? And could any of us ever mend the shattered remnants of trust? Subscribe and leave your like. My inner plea echoed against the backdrop of our unraveling reality, a desperate call for connection in the midst of betrayal. I turned to face the figures around me, searching desperately for any sign of remorse or solidarity. But in their eyes, I saw only the cold, unyielding truth of treachery. What would you do if everything you trusted crumbled in an instant? As I gathered my scattered thoughts and began to retreat from the room, a low, almost inaudible whisper brushed against my ear. A final haunting note that promised even deeper secrets lay hidden in the darkness. In that moment, as I stood trembling on the threshold of a future forever altered, I couldn't shake the lingering question that froze me to the core. What did he whisper next that froze me?